This is Ebony Bennett, and before we start today's Follow the Money episode, I wanted to let you know that the Australia Institute's end of financial year appeal is on right now. And between now and June 30th, every single dollar you donate to the Australia Institute will be matched dollar for dollar until we reach our target of $70,000. That means if you donate $10, the Australia Institute receives $20. If you donate $50, the Australia Institute receives $100. So if you donate right now, you can double the impact of your donation. The Australia Institute and this podcast is supported by listeners like you. We aren't funded by government or political parties. We primarily rely on donations, big and small, from our supporters to fund all of our research and advocacy. Whether it's a monthly donation of $10 or a one-off donation of $100 or $1,000, every single dollar you donate helps fund research that matters. The Australia Institute is one of the country's most influential public policy think tanks. And whether it's this podcast, our popular webinar series, or our top quality research, the Institute is always leading the debate with big new ideas or helping engage the public with issues that are important to them. On this podcast, we really try to bring our research straight to your ears, completely free for anyone to access, and invite you behind the scenes of politics to peel back the curtain and explain the really big, important issues in ways that are accessible to everyone. And we love our listeners, so thank you for listening, and please consider making a donation at australiainstitute.org.au. Every donation of $2 or more is tax deductible. Now, on to the episode.
One for Mum, one for Dad, and one for the country.
And there has never been a more exciting time to be an Australian.
Budgets are about choices, Fran, and you show what you value through the choices you make.
Dead, buried, cremated.
This is coal. Don't be afraid. Don't be scared.
The Treasury.
Australia's basically done for. We'll just end up being a third-rate economy. You know, a banana republic.
How good is Australia?
Just follow the money.
G'day, and welcome to Follow the Money, the Australia Institute's podcast demystifying the big economic issues in Australia and putting them in plain English. I'm Ebony Bennett, Deputy Director at the Australia Institute, and today we'll be talking about one of Australia's most beloved icons, the ute.
Aussie utes and Aussie vans. Compare the price today. When it's performance and value you're looking for, it's Ford Falcon all the way.
New Holden Rodeo V6. The most powerful.
New Hilux.
I knew you'd find them.
Oh, what a feeling. Toyota.
Australia's just had its first recession after 30-odd years of uninterrupted economic growth. Unemployment rose, huge sections of the economy shut down, very necessarily due to the COVID pandemic, and the government has been boosting public spending to get the economy back on track. And again, that's absolutely the right thing to do. Now is not the time to be worried about debt and deficit. But how the government spends that money is important, not just how much they spend. And one of the things that the federal government is incentivising people to buy is utes.
Over 11 million workers can write off the full value of any eligible asset, so a tradie can buy a new ute, a farmer a new harvester, and a manufacturer expand their production line.
So today we're going to dive into the Ute-led Recovery with Chief Economist Richard Dennis and Matt Saunders from our economics team, and they recently wrote a paper called 1 Tonne of Jobs and Growth. G'day Matt and Richard, thanks for joining me.
Hey Eb. Thanks for having me.
Richard, to you first. Long-time listeners will be very familiar with you saying that it's not just the size of the government spending that's important, but the shape of it. How on earth did you end up writing a paper about utes?
I've always wanted to, Eb. I've just been biding my time all these years. I mean, the remarkable thing is that really one of the biggest new announcement in the most recent budget was these what are called accelerated depreciation provisions. These sort of tax concessions that really encourage businesses to go out there and spend money right now. So anyone that's ever bought a laptop computer and tried to deduct it off their tax will know that if your laptop's assumed to last for 3 years, then you kind of chop it up into thirds and you depreciate your computer each year. So you deduct a third of the value each year, for example. Well, what the government's come out and done is said, well, actually, if you buy a piece of capital equipment, if you buy some stuff for your business, you can write it off 100% this year in this year's tax return. And there's special provisions in there for commercial vehicles. So as opposed to buying a passenger car, as opposed to buying an electric car, if you buy a vehicle with a ton or more of carrying capacity, like these enormous utes you see on the road, then you get these instant asset write-offs for up to $150,000 worth of car. And, you know, as we've shown in our recent paper, there's an enormous surge in the number of utes that people are buying because these tax concessions are working. So, yeah, who'd have thought that the macroeconomics of the Commonwealth budget would revolve around utes, but they do, and so does the politics.
The biggest selling vehicle in May was the Toyota Hilux. Light commercial sales passed passenger vehicles for the first time in February, and sales totalled 23,177 in May, 3,000 more than the number of passenger cars.
So, Matt, Richard's just talked about there that the incentives are working. To what extent are they working? How many utes are we talking about here?
Well, I think the numbers are about 1 in 4 vehicles sold are utes, so it's really just utes and SUVs to be exactly precise about these types of numbers. So back in the olden days when we used to make our own cars, you'd see the Commodore and the Falcon would dominate the top 10 charts week after week, month after month. But these days it's all just utes. So pretty much every top 10 cars that are purchased under a novated lease arrangement are all SUVs or utes of some sort.
And novated lease means company car, right, Matt?
Yes, that's right. That's the official way to get these sorts of cars on the books and to take advantage of these tax concessions.
So we're talking Hiluxes, we're talking, Nissan Navaras. These are the top selling.
Ford Ranger.
These are the top selling cars.
And after the utes getting the SUVs as well, which can, a whole range of the RAV4s and all sorts of Subaru XVs and everything but the regular type of passenger car.
Yeah, so I think I've got the top 10 here from your paper. So coming in, I'm guessing they're in order. Yes, they are. So from volume sold in May 2021, top of the pops was Toyota Hilux, followed by a Ford Ranger, RAV4, a Isuzu D-Max, Toyota Land Cruiser, a Mazda CX-5, Mitsubishi Triton, Toyota Prado, Toyota Corolla, and a Hyundai i30.
Woohoo! That's a passenger car.
Yeah, some of these are up year on year, something like 200% for the Isuzu D-Max. So, yeah, this has really, Richard, been an overwhelming success as far as the government's concerned.
Oh, look, in every sense. Like, we're selling enormous amounts of utes, tick. Utes are now accounting for a much larger percentage of car sales. So car sales are up. Utes as a proportion of car sales is up. And, yeah, small passenger cars, they're filling up 8 and 9 and 10 on our top 10 list. So the government had this policy to encourage people to buy commercial vehicles, and it's been a remarkable success. But, of course, the absurdity is the same government says, we'd never want to subsidise electric vehicles. That'd be distorting the market.
Yeah, those luxury cars.
Well, we're not into subsidising luxury cars. It's not something we're going to do as a government. I mean, people who have the money to buy a luxury car are welcome to go out and do that. That's their choice. Good on them.
It's not going to tow your trailer. It's not going to tow your boat. It's not going to get you out to your favourite camping spot with your family. Bill Shorten wants to end the weekend.
But Richard, what's wrong with the Ute-led recovery? I mean, why do you hate the weekend?
I've always hated the weekend, Deb. I've been feuding with the weekend for years. Look, it's amazing, isn't it? For people that need to carry a ton of stuff around on their way to work, a ute is a really efficient vehicle. But most of these utes, in fact, all of these utes in the top 10, are what are called twin cab utes. So, they're 4-door, 5-seater cars with a big tray in the back. And as as Matt said before, it used to be Commodores and Falcons that people drove their families around in, company cars that they got personal value out of. Because of the way we've designed our tax concessions, the smart car to buy as a company car, the smart car to buy for your small business is one of these twin cab utes, which, guess what? They're really heavy, they're really fuel inefficient, they do more damage to the roads, especially in cities. They take up quite a lot of space when parked on both sides of the road. So while the rest of the world is trying to reduce emissions by driving fuel efficiency and or electric cars, in Australia we're literally spending billions of dollars to subsidise an enormous change in the shape of our car fleet, but our car fleet is getting bigger. Our car fleet is getting heavier. Our car fleet is getting more diesel intensive, which means far more particulate pollution in our cities. And, what we're doing is setting ourselves up to make it harder to reduce emissions in 5 or 10 years' time.
So, Matt, the idea would be, or I'm sure that the government would say that, giving a bunch of small businesses utes like this or access to them, is a boost for productivity. Is that right?
Well, I guess the government would like you to think that, but these sorts of subsidies have been in place for quite a few years now to various degrees. And in a general sense, if a ute was a profitable purchase for a company, they've probably already done it. It's been working for them for a number of years. This sort of just increases the turnover of these utes. Buy a new ute each year. The suburban accountant might even encourage you to buy a second car that, may be used once a month, once a week. They're not really what you call productive purchases. The tax system was already set up to give a good bit of a shove, incentive to genuinely profitable investments. But this just changes an investment decision that small or medium businesses may make into assets that may not be as productive as hoped.
And think of it this way: while a new computer might run slightly faster or make it possible to use newer software, while a new coffee machine, the kind of which the Deputy Prime Minister likes to mock, might mean that one staff member can make more coffees at a time. Giving tradespeople new utes doesn't get them to work faster. Hopefully, they conform to the speed limit before the new ute and after. The carrying capacity of the utes is about similar. So, they might have nicer interiors, they might have better stereos, but the idea that these new utes are going to drive productivity growth, it's tenuous in the extreme. I actually think it's laughable. And if you look at, again, the composition of our car fleet, by all measures, our car fleet is getting less efficient. That is, businesses are spending more money on petrol, to lug these enormous behemoths around. That's the opposite of boosting productivity and efficiency.
Yeah, it's quite amazing on the fuel efficiency front that over the last 20 or 30 years, the actual efficiency per tonne or per kilogram is improved greatly, but these new cars, our fleet of stock is just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. We're chewing more and more fuel on these enormous vehicles.
So the engines are more efficient, but they're lugging such heavy cars around. We're actually using more petrol than we used to.
Yeah.
These are genuinely set up like small trucks to carry a small truck load. They're not set up for comfort or safety or for driving pleasure, really.
Yeah. Although having driven my dad's ute, they are a bit of a pleasure to drive. Up hills, certainly. Got a lot more grunt than my little car. I was going to ask, though, about the jobs here. So obviously after a recession, the government's trying to reduce unemployment. Matt, in terms of creating jobs, how's the Ute-led recovery going? It's good at selling utes, but is it creating many jobs?
Well, I'd probably say not very many. The government, this policy in its current form is an extension of previous goes at it, and subsequent budget papers have reduced the number of expected jobs to be created from the scheme. So the government doesn't really provide a whole lot of modelling detail on how they got to their job numbers, but if it didn't work so good last year, it's hard to see it working much better this year. And when you think about the type of incentives that are being offered, none of this stuff is made in Australia anymore. So whilst it may stimulate the selling of cars, the wholesaling of cars, the importing of cars, that doesn't really employ a whole lot of Australians.
Yeah.
So it's hard to see it creating a whole lot of jobs growth.
Yeah. So, Richard, I believe you've calculated in this paper that based on what the government provides, the data that the government provides, that the cost per job of the instant asset write-off is between $307,000 per job and $690,000 per job.
Yep.
How does that compare to really spending on anything else?
Well, I was going to say, compared to a nurse, it's a bargain. Yeah, so look, as Matt said, really because most of this money flows out of Australia and, to the people who make the cars overseas, there's very little domestic job creation from what are quite significant spending. So if you went and spent $150,000 on restaurant meals and hotels and holidays here in Australia, you'd create quite a lot of jobs in the labour-intensive accommodation and tourism industry. If you went and spent $150,000 in the health sector, you could create, or the aged care sector or the disability sector, you could create quite a lot of jobs. So, according to the government's own estimates, we're talking up to $600,000 per job here, whereas, what our paper suggests is if you spent the same amount of money in something like the higher education sector, you'd create around 54,000 jobs. So, we've been saying this since the beginning of the crisis. The government should focus on labour-intensive spending in the local regions that need it, and hopefully on things that deliver lasting benefits. So if we apply those criteria to utes, is it labour-intensive? No. Are we targeting the spending at the local regions that need it? No. And are we going to get lasting benefits out of these utes? No. We're going to get lasting fuel inefficiency, because whether it's 5 years or whether it's 10, we're going to have to replace all of these things with far more efficient, probably electric vehicles. So driving a spike in demand for them now is actually causing us a problem down the track, not setting us up for an advantage.
And if the utes were going to be used in their proper manner, you could probably turn them over quite quickly and out of the car stock. But since they're used for more sort of commuting type pleasures, they're going to remain in the car stock for many, many years. This gives you an entire fleet of young teenagers driving huge utes in 5 to 10 years' time.
Yeah, as they come into the second-hand market. Perhaps we should get Ford to send over one of the new electric F-150s. Joe Biden looked like he had a pretty good time.
Mr. President!
This sucker's quick.
How's it drive?
Would
you buy one of these?
I would.
How does it feel to be behind the wheel, sir?
It feels great. I tell you what.
Driving those, maybe an electric ute is the way that we'll finally get the government to care about EVs. Do you reckon, Richard?
Well, I guess really the billion-dollar question is, do electric utes ruin the weekend? I mean, it really
Surely that's the worst of all possible worlds, Richard.
It's the unasked question of the global transport policy. Look, it's fascinating you say that, because apart from the fact that, Joe Biden spending nearly $200 billion to stimulate the US car industry to switch to electric as fast as they can. If you think about electric utes, for example, they're enormously convenient, because a lot of time spent on work sites is plugging in and powering electric tools, whether it's saws or drills or you name it. And guess what an electric ute is? It's a giant battery that you can plug all of your tools into.
It allows Ioniq 5 to be used as a power source, so customers can use the electricity stored in the battery during outdoor activities such as camping. And it's powerful enough to run home appliances.
So if we did want to drive productivity, if we did want to drive efficiency and innovation, there's no doubt that people on work sites having ready access to enormous amounts of electricity, rather than having either noisy generators or having to spend extra money on a generator to go with their expensive ute, there's huge productivity benefits to be gained from the electrification, not just of the vehicle fleet, but basically providing battery power wherever wherever the tradespeople are. So, yeah, look, unfortunately, as with nearly everything to do with climate and energy policy, Australia's yet again at the back of the track. But the electric F-150, if you Google it, and similarly the electric Tesla light commercial vehicle over there, fast, quiet, very few moving parts, enormously reliable, with the added convenience of, plug your tools into it.
Matt, in the past, the Australian government has really run massive scare campaigns around electric vehicles. But if an electric ute is as fancy and awesome as Richard's just said, how come more tradies aren't taking them up?
Well, it's all about possibilities, really. There's a whole YouTube channel out there for tradies and Teslas that gives a bit of a rundown of the experience had when a tradie jumps in one of these electric cars. It's a matter of getting the word out there. It's a matter of advertising. It's a matter of discussions at barbecues. It only takes one mate to get one, and you realise how good they are.
So just stop completely and just plant it. Hose again. Holy! Holy fuck! You did. Fucking put you in your seat. Give it some. You're all right.
It's small subsidy in the other direction, possibly help as well.
Yeah.
Price-sensitive customers can easily switch from one brand to another. We no longer have that strong allegiance for Holden versus Ford anymore.
But just so we're clear, we're all Team Holden, right?
Yeah, of course.
But yeah, look, Matt's spot on. I mean, people can't miss what they've never had. It's also hard for them to aspire to something they haven't experienced. And yeah, the tradies and Tesla's YouTube videos are hilarious. The one of Bob Catter in there is quite interesting as well. So again, as with so much of Australian politics, Scott Morrison, Tony Abbott, they've spent so long telling people that reducing emissions is going to drive up costs and ruin your life and ruin your weekend. Anyone that's driven an electric vehicle, and I have, knows that they are so quiet, they are so nice, they're so comfortable, they're so fast if you want them to be, and again for tradies likely to be so convenient. But while the rest of the world is looking at subsidies to speed up the uptake of these vehicles, because they are a bit more expensive at the moment, and if you want to get the word out there, there's no doubt that subsidies help to do that. But yeah, while the rest of the world's doing that, what our budget papers make clear is we're spending billions of dollars in Australia encouraging people to buy enormous 2-ton utes that they drive around the city, and there's no benefit for anyone except some tax savings, which are entirely artificial.
Yeah. Well, we might wrap it up there, and I'll just say that I had to put that in about Team Holden because I do come from a family of tradies. My dad and my brother both have utes, and my dad did once bring home a Ford ute instead of a Holden ute. Ooh. And my brother wouldn't let him park it in the driveway. So I just want to be clear to my dad and my brother, if you're listening, we're all Team Holden.
Well, you do realise these utes do have parking conditions. They can park anywhere they want in loading zones as well at your local shopping centre.
Yeah, benefits galore. Easier to park your big ute than a disabled sticker. Yeah. Absolutely. Well, Eb, I hope you got to move the Chimera to get the Tirana out so you could back out the Tesla.
That's right. Excellent. We're going to have to wrap it up there. Thanks very much, Matt and Richard.
Excellent.
Thanks, Eb.
This episode was recorded on Tuesday the 15th of June, and things may have changed since recording. And don't forget to subscribe to the podcast and leave us a review if you can. It helps other people to find us. We do have a couple of amazing webinars coming up that you should check out too. On Wednesday the 16th of June, we're talking to Richard Flanagan, beloved Australian author and Booker Prize winner, about his new book Toxic. And soon after that, we'll be speaking to Bree Lee about her new book, Who Gets to Be Smart. And not long after that, we'll be talking to the former Swedish Foreign Minister, Margot Wallström, about feminist foreign policy. You can find all that and more, including our Utes paper, at australiainstitute.org.au. We're on Twitter at the Oz Institute with an AUS. My Twitter handle is Ebony_Bennett with a NNT. Richard Dennis is at RDNS_TAI. This episode was produced by Jennifer Macy, and our theme music is by Jonathan McFeet from Pulse and Thrum, with additional music from Blue Dot Sessions. Stay safe out there, and thanks for listening.